I often identify it as an empath. Empaths think they have to absorb everything like a sponge. So my entire life, I'm like, oh, I'll alchemize your energy. I'll alchemize your energy. I'll alchemize your, oh, you don't like me? That's okay. I'll alchemize your energy. That is an old ancestral wound to survive from the witch wound. An empath is really the wounded version of you not harnessing your energy and owning your power.
Hello and welcome to Sync and Flow, the podcast with me, your host, Josie Thorne. I am a Red Tent Women's Circle facilitator, a womb healer, and feminine empowerment coach. I have been guiding women to embody their true essence through womb activations and feminine embodiment practices. I started Sync and Flow to help educate and connect women back to the wisdom of their sacred womb space and cyclical nature. I want to help all women reawaken to the true power of the feminine that lives deep within them, so that they may cultivate a relationship to self that is rooted in pure trust, divine love, and a deeply intuitive connection to the body. Thank you for being here and taking the time to listen to this podcast episode. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sync and Flow, the podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. We have the amazing Michelle here as our guest, and we are going to be diving into all sorts of juicy topics together, including light language, healing the dark feminine, and all these other things that want to come up through the experience of multidimensional healing. So I was very blessed to connect with Michelle last year, 2023, in September through an online retreat that we were collaborating on. And since then, we've had this really beautiful connection and relationship. I taught as well in her membership portal, Soul, at the end of last year. And it was beautiful for her to give me that opportunity. And so I thought, why not have her on the podcast to talk to all of you, because she's a fellow witch and she's also super passionate about helping women step into their power and their unbridled self-expression. So I'm gonna quickly read from her website and then she can give you a little bit more, because we were just speaking before we started hitting record around how she's getting all these visions and downloads of how her work is shifting and changing. And I think that's just the pure joy of being in this field and realizing that ultimately, God and spirit and source is our director and is our ultimate guide. And so when you are tapped in, you can listen to those whispers and really just be guided along the journey that you're meant to take. And that can look so different for everyone. So Michelle is the visionary owner of Three CCCs Healing, a holistic healing practice specialized in clinical hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, quantum healing, hypnosis technique, metaphor therapy, and child trauma resolution. With a deep understanding of the subconscious mind, Michelle employs theta matrix recodes and light language activation to facilitate profound transformation in her clients. As a seasoned mindset coach and quantum healer, Michelle is known as the queen of past life regressions, guiding individuals through the depths of their soul's history to unearth valuable insights and heal deep-seated patterns. Her experience extends to DNA activation channeling, where she assists clients in unlocking their highest potential and reclaiming their authentic selves. Michelle's journey as a healer and activator is rooted in her own personal experiences and spiritual awakening. Welcome, Michelle, to the Sync and Flow podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today, babe. I would love for you to just give the listeners a little intro as to who you are and, yeah, how did you get to do the work that you do today?
So my name is Michelle. I live in Burley, Idaho, USA. So we're a little bit of different distance here, but I am a mother of two children, happily married. And I say happily because I really do enjoy my spouse of 14 years. We'll be 15 years in December. We've been together about 18 years. So he's my person. Someone said, men are this way or this way. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a guy like that. That's not how my husband is. So I homeschool my oldest who has type 1 diabetes. And so my mission, I know, is specifically to help with the physical body, which is where my work is really moving into, is like, what is connected to the physical body? What is the reason for this? What's the cognitive association with this? What's the ego playing out? And so as I've really shifted my work from just mind, right, and moving more into like the multidimensional space where we're working with the mind, and, the ego is actually not just the villain, victim, or hero. It's actually what's creating your reality. And so when you learn how to manipulate and work with the ego as a computer system and an app, you're able to actually shift your frequency really quickly. So a lot of people are experiencing, like, I've done all this mind work, I see it, I can feel the patterns, but I'm not actually getting the reality shift that I'm here to do. And that's because we have created this idea in spirituality and as a society that the ego is bad. So when we work with the ego, we're able to transform things very, very quickly because the body works really quickly. I move energy really, really fast. I am very, very quick frequency. I move energy fast. And I'm here to really show people that you really are just a frequency away from shifting your reality. You really are. And when you're a multidimensional being and you completely understand that and you realize you're here to play a game, you're here to experience and learn things. And as we learn those and we take things as learning instead of being victimized something, our reality moves quicker. And we're able to find the growth and the learnings very quickly without having to feel those deep, horrible pains, right? And so the energy shifts really, really fast. So my work is shifting by teaching people that you don't need to dive so deep into feeling that wound at such a core level that you have to re-experience the pain over and over again. It's really about shifting the perspective. And that's how you heal, is just by shifting the perspective and then embodying it. So I have worked with many women, not a whole lot of men, and not because I don't want to work with men. I actually don't have a problem working with men. It's just kind of how it's rolled, and I've helped people, get out of abusive relationships with coaching them through their worth. And really your worth is how you decide to perceive your relationships and what you know that your value is. And I think the biggest issue that we're experiencing as women is understanding what our actual value is, that we're not just here to be like, I am a stay-at-home mom with my kids, but I enjoy it and I love it and I find joy in that. But I'm not limited to that, if that makes sense. Like, my husband's always encouraged me to, I have an education, and he's pushed me into like making sure that I always have a B plan, right? Not because of like him and I not working out, but he's like, that's how women find empowerment, is making sure they know their worth. And I think it takes really an incredible man, a very secure man, to live and watch a woman be very secure. And so that's the reality that I've created, is I have, a really supportive partner. And I know a lot of people don't have that. And so I know I'm supposed to be here to show and represent, like, listen, you can have this.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. I would love for you to share more on this, why the ego is so needed in the healing process. And, this whole, the spiritual dichotomy that says, oh, we need to banish the ego. The ego is bad. We need to get rid of the ego. And so this is also something I've been realizing recently and been trying to teach my clients, like, no, the ego is sacred and our relationship to it is sacred. We just need to ask it to sit in the back seat, and now the soul drives the car and the ego can sit in the back seat and give, directions every now and then, but it's not the one in charge. And so I think we need to repattern and renegotiate our relationship to our ego. I would love for you to speak more on that.
So I actually believe the ego is your relay system. So the mind is what's telling the relay, which is the ego, what to play out. So there can be, we call it the ego mind, right? And I actually call it the victimized mind, because if you go back to when you first awakened, everything, you were victimized by everything, right? Like, you weren't actually empowered by things that you experienced, right? So the ego, I believe, so the mind is like this computer system, and the ego is the apps. Like, we don't ever get mad at an app for just running the system that it's told to run, right? And so the ego really should be your best friend. And the ego shows up as, so when I work with the ego, ego, I tell the ego to dump all files that I told you to run on, quote, this system. And the body will start to, and I'll even ask, I'll say, hey, emotional body, confirm that all files are dumped with a yawn, burp, sneeze, or a sigh. And immediately, I mean, you could do this in a group setting and watch in my soul. Everyone at the same time yawns. It's so cool to watch. And so they're like, everyone's like, and they're like yawning and yawning and yawning because they're releasing all of that energy that you told it to hold on to. And then you say, now I say, hey, ego, run the program of love and show me this evidence of how easy it is to find love in my reality. And then your job is to start looking for the little clues that your guides are actually showing you. Look, you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. And then you start to run that system. That's how easy it is. And so people think ego is this like, oh my gosh, you're a victim, villain, or a hero, and you're in the ego triangle, right? That's false matrix. Like that's what they want you to think it is, because how easy it is to change your mind shift. Well, it's not easy, but when you change your mind shift and then your reality is still not changing, and you're like, well, the mind shift didn't work. That's because your ego isn't on board. Your ego is your best friend. It really should be the one facilitating and showing you the evidence. And that's what your ego is. It's the version of you showing your evidence. And what my guides told me is they said the only two things that are physical in this reality are your mind and your ego.
Wow.
It's the only thing. Everything else is like, I believe the inner child is your soul. It's the playful version of yourself. It's what's here to like evolve and create love and flow and be that, I've got a 7-year-old, be that spunky little, I don't give a shit kind of attitude, right? And she's like that. She doesn't care. Like, you don't like her. She's like, yeah, I'll stand alone and I don't care. Like, she's the Lone Ranger. Both my kids are like that. They don't care. And I'm like that. I don't care if I'm the Lone Ranger. I'm here to harness love, light, and truth, right? And so the ego really, once you learn how to manipulate the ego, it shifts and it upgrades your system really quickly, because you're like, okay, I have this belief on love and I can recode it. And I call it coding, because you're really just going into the files that are in your mind and you're like, yeah, I don't consent to the relationship my mom and dad had, right? I want a relationship where it's passionate and it's fiery and it's sexual and it's all these things, right? I don't consent to, being friends, just being friends, right? I want a passionate, fiery relationship. And so that's the reality that I created, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, wow. And I mean, it can be so easy, like you said, but also it's like one of the biggest struggles that we go on in the healing journey is, I think it's because of those attachments that we have to the outdated systems, to the outdated beliefs. It's because you're attached to this outdated belief that it is still running the show. And so, I mean, if you have any advice for someone that is really struggling with a belief, I mean, personally, I know I struggled with a belief around like friendships and feeling like worthy of having like, a good soul tribe of sisters around me and like really supportive friends that were like on my level and were spiritual and who I didn't need to like negotiate, like, oh, it's okay, whatever, around values especially. And so I was just wondering, like, do you have any kind of tips or tricks for the audience and people that are just really struggling with like certain beliefs that they just keep on coming up? And I think there's a lot around, we often struggle with like money beliefs and like worthiness, and all of those beliefs are so entangled.
So I believe a belief is either it's just a program. So when I work with the belief system, I mean, I used to be a hypnotherapist, so I used to go in the subconscious and I used to go through, this is where my work's changing. Now they show me it's just literally a little tag on the back of the lumbar below the neck. And when I pull that, then I reprogram the ego system and I start to show the evidence. So with friendships are a deep reflection of how you perceive yourself. For me, like, I even had a friend the other day, she's like, man, you really know how to pick people, Michelle, and bring them into your life. Why is that? And I said, because I really have a huge no bullshit meter. And people call me the boundary bitch, because and it's not about not having triggers. It's just like, this is my reality and I get to choose what I allow in it and what I don't allow in it. And when you have that no bullshit attitude, you start to attract people that kind of have that no bullshit attitude, But if you're a person that often flakes, or someone who who, isn't a person of your word, that's what you're going to attract into your reality until you start to realize like, oh, my word's really valuable. And you learn to like really bring in the people that honor your flow. Like that's a huge piece in friendship is I'm a mom of two. My husband works on the road, so I'm alone by myself a lot. And if you want to play in my reality, you're going to have to realize like there are days when my son's blood sugars I can't handle. And there's days that, you have to really learn to like honor people where they're at while simultaneously honoring you. And there's this beautiful flow of balance that you can find in women that realize that like really, if someone's really upset with you, first belief that I would really learn how to embody is it's never about you.
Yeah.
It's never about you. It's always about their interpretation. In fact, I just got off the phone with a friend and she was like, I said, I think I'm just here to trigger people. And she goes, why? And I said, I walk into a room and people are like,
me too.
yeah. They're like, man, she's just so confident. Why is she so confident? And I'm a curvy girl. Like I got curves. I'm a curvy girl. And I walk in like I fucking own the place. And you want to know why? Because I do, right? Like just own yourself, own your space. And that's one thing I teach in soul is like, you never apologize for being you. You never apologize for life happening. You never apologize. Start owning and taking up space. It's the best thing you'll ever take in your life. And when people have problems with it, cool, have a problem with it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. Like be you. Right. Yeah. And so my friend was like, I think I'm here to trigger people. Like, I don't have to say anything to anybody. And they're like, I'm the topic of conversation. Right. And I always tell people, thanks for boosting my algorithm in society. People are just talking about you. The better people are going to check you out.
Yeah, babe. I feel that so deeply. Like, honestly, I also feel like I am the sacred disruptor. And that comes with being a sacred disruptor. It's like you're going to rub people the wrong way because you are bringing this fierce truth and love and light, and like people who've been stuck in these really dark, toxic programs, of course they're going to be rubbed the wrong way. Of course they're going to be triggered. And so I really deeply resonate with what you're saying. And I really just want to ask, like, how do you deal with projections? Because I used to get I used to crumble under people's projections. And that was obviously in a space where I was very insecure and I wasn't so deeply rooted in my power and in my truth as I am now. Like now the projections, they just kind of like wash over me like a fucking water off a duck's back. But like in the past, I rarely used to feel myself like crumbling under them. And so I was just wondering, how do you deal with that?
So the first thing I do in the morning is I take my left hand and I stick it on my belly button and I say force field activate and I activate my force field.
Yeah. Love that.
And I take up all this space, right? Like this is my space. I take up all this space. And I've learned two things. One, I am very selective about who I let in my space because my space, my time, my energy is all very sacred. And you better be a vibe because I'm here for a vibe, right? First of all. Second of all, when people project, I had to reprogram my ego to understand that it's not about me. And what I did was I started to really harness and activate my solar plexus into my power. And what I mean by this is I often identified as an empath.
Yes.
Here's another beautiful learning Michelle learned from False Lights Matrix. Empaths think they have to absorb everything like a sponge. So my entire life, I'm like, oh, I'll alchemize your energy. I'll alchemize your energy. I'll alchemize your, oh, you don't like me? That's okay. I'll alchemize your energy. That is an old ancestral wound to survive from the witch wound. That's what my guides told me, which I was like,
wow.
Right? So an empath, well, I'm getting like full body chills right now. An empath is really the wounded version of you not harnessing your energy and owning your power.
Wow.
Are you mind blown right now? Because I was mind blown.
I'm literally getting like also full body like shivers.
Yes.
Oh my God. And I guess that's really like that victim mentality that like we have to take on everyone else's bullshit.
Woo! My whole body's lit up after saying
that. Me too. Oh my God, because that was definitely a state I was in for so long. And I just absorbed and absorbed. But that was a reflection of like my aura was weak. My boundaries were weak. And you know, because if I had strong boundaries, that never would have like been able to affect me. Other people's projections would never have been able to affect me in the way that they do. I mean, in the way that they did. Because now, like, bounce off me and I'm like, cool, bye, you know, don't even like, impact me. But yo, that's so interesting. And I guess that brings me to, this point around like the importance of boundaries on a not just a physical level, but also on an energetic level, and how, really we need to not be afraid, especially as women who we've been conditioned into this people pleasing like role of like
Good girl.
the good girl. Yeah. Please, can you speak to
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. So this is something I actually talk about in my Dark Feminine in I did like an 8-part series. And what I talk about is the good girl syndrome is a old ancestral link to ancestral wounds. So what happened was women were often, right, before the 12th century, women were very empowered. They worked out of their homes. If you study kind of how the whole witch phase came, and then the king decided that women belonged in their homes. So they didn't allow women to work, right? And so we were required to go in our homes. And this is where the witch idea came from, because if women worked outside of the home, they were identified as a witch. And so it just expanded from there. And so what happened was that we started to actually create new DNA sequencing that created this idea in our entire systems, like women are meant to stay home. Women are meant to be the ones taking care of you're not allowed to work. It's very like frowned upon to work outside of the home, right? And so what happened was when I decided to, like, I have an education, I taught school, I've taught, I've taught outside the home, and is very frowned upon, especially where I live in my area, which is very religious. People were like, oh my gosh, you're working outside of the home, like you're a working mom. Do you need to work? Do you need them? It's like people have these ideas. And this specifically is because women have this idea, and I like to call it an idea instead of a belief, because if it's a belief, then we actually take it in, right? So it's an idea, and this idea is that you're supposed to act and perform a certain way in order for men to be comfortable. And so what happens is when women are in their power, most men find it uncomfortable because they've never found a woman who speaks their truth and holds their frequency, right? And I even said this in the beginning. It takes a very embodied, powerful man to be comfortable with a woman who's harnessing her power. Because the divine feminine really is here to awaken the masculine. So if you're letting yourself not be in your power and you're in a union, that's because you're not comfortable being in your power, which means you're restricting your masculine from awakening. So when I stepped into my power, my masculine started to awaken, and it was hard first. I'm not saying marriage is easy, because it has its shifts, but we're in this beautiful, he's in his awakening, right? He's like, did you know this? I'm like, yes. Did you know this? Yes. Right. And so it's really fun to but I haven't ever been like, you need to awaken. You need to do this. You need to do that. And like, I'm honoring where he's at, because it's his soul to evolve into what he wants. If he wants to say, hey, Michelle, he'll be like, I'm really inflamed. Can you do your little energy clearing that you do? And I do it in like 5 minutes, and I'll clear his whole field in 5 minutes, working with different guides and energies, and I'll clear his frequency. And he's learning these different things in the power of energy. But the thing is, most people don't realize is Mary Magdalene was actually the one who awoken Yeshua. And she was the one who awoken him. It's really interesting, because as you start to work with specific guides, I work with Mary Magdalene quite a bit, and I love her energy. In fact, I actually just did an activation called Divine Light Weaving, which was an activation which brought in like huge mass source codes into like recoding your soul back into that code. She's the one who guided the whole thing. Like she just has this beautiful, and her light language is very distinct. And so it's like, as you bring in these energies, and even working with Lilith, for example, I channel Lilith as well. And, people think that you have to be this almost like a risque kind of energy, but it's not. It's about really harnessing your energy of whatever that looks like for you, right? Harnessing your energy. Like I harness energy very differently than some people, but that's fine, because I hold a different frequency. And so as we embody, we just always have to understand. And I always check in with myself, is this an embodiment of source code? That's what I always ask, to make sure my channels are always clean. Is this an embodiment of source code? And if the answer is no, I've got to change something. Does that make sense? So that's a really easy tip to really harness that energy. And so I think when we bring in these codes of divine codes, and we really harness our frequency of embodiment and true. Like, if you're going to be authentic, you need to be authentic. Like, if you're going to preach you're authentic, you should be the same person, whether you're with grandma, dad, uncle, your best friend, you should be the same person. You shouldn't have to shift roles. And that's what's happening a lot in our spiritual community is I'll be one way with my partner, another way with my friends, and another way in my family because my family won't accept me if I'm this way. And that's a false belief.
Yeah, totally. And this is where that dark feminine energy really starts to come online when we realize, like, I am who I am, and those that love me and accept me will love me and accept me as I am. Like, I don't need to change. I don't need to shapeshift. I don't need to, like, filter myself or water myself down with some people, but then I can be my bright shining light with others. No, like, if you cannot be your bright shining light with someone, that means that the container that the relationship is holding is distorted and isn't pure, and like maybe there's something about them that doesn't make you feel safe to be your full unexpressed self. But also maybe like turning the mirror back on yourself, what is it about you that doesn't feel safe to be your full unexpressed self in relationship with them? And so there's all these questions, and it's always around turning the mirror back on the self, looking at the self and being like, how am I restricting myself? Doesn't matter about them. Like, if I am my full unabashed self, and if they truly love and respect me, then I can be my full expressed divine powerful self, and like they must either get with it or get lost. And it's quite a hard reality to kind of like embody, but it's the truth. Why would you want to be in relationship with people who do not accentuate and encourage you in your powerful light? And so this is where the teachings of the dark divine feminine really come from. And we're stepping out of that like girlhood energy of like, I want everyone to like me, I want everyone to love me, like let me just people please and be friendly with everyone because like I'm so great, and like everyone should just get to know me how great I am, and blah 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 blah. And it's like this really like this need to be liked, and it's very much like this performative femininity. We're performing our feminine energy for the sake of others, but actually that's when we on a personal level get burnt out and we don't speak our truth because we're not embodied in our authentic power. I have also found so much healing and so much self-empowerment of stepping into this like bad bitch, dark feminine energy and really like reclaiming the word bitch. Like you said, like your friends call you the boundaries bitch. Like rather have boundaries than be like a people pleasing, burnt out, whatever, like rather be empowered, rather have your energy like in the center rather than scattered and leaking all over the show.
Right. And the other thing too is when you allow someone to walk all over you, you allow yourself to want people like that's the wound of validation.
Yeah.
That's the validation of you wanting validation that you're worth a shit. And that's where that wound is. It's not anything about anybody else. It's your wound about needing external validation, which I think is probably one of the deepest wounds a lot of us have is the need of validation. It's like, oh, is my channel on cue? Did you get this? It's a very big external validation that we desire as a human. And then we create these beautiful things like, your multidimensional body is very like almost like stringy, right? And so when we start to humans love to create attachments. And when they create attachments, they're actually creating entities. They're taking energy from dark underworld and they're creating an entity. So when you create an attachment on the what if scenario, right? People love, I call it what if Titus, right? You're like, what if this
talk about this a lot as well. Looping in the what ifs. It's so dangerous.
It's a loop, right? And then you start to create and grab entities. And so what I'm seeing with a lot of people right now, they're just covered with entities. And so when they do that, they're creating and you choose that. If you have entities attached to you, you consciously chose that. And that is attached to the wounds and things. And so they create these stories and they're really just the entities that are attaching themselves to you. My work has actually moved a lot to like removing entities and removing the constructs out of the subconscious of like, what did that entity tell you to believe? And then you started to create these mass energies of embodying this idea that you embodied of whatever it told you to believe, right? And the dark feminine, really, the idea is like most people think dark feminine is wounded, and it actually isn't. The dark feminine is where you, in the shadow, you grab your power and you're like, I'm going to own this, and I'm going to sit in this space of I am worth a shit. I embody divine love. I am this, because the shadow is not necessarily what people think. They think the shadow version of yourself is like this scary dark energy, but it's really where you harness your power.
Yeah.
And so the dark feminine is really, you have to go into your dark feminine to really grab your gifts, grab your power, grab who you are, identify authenticity. That's all dark feminine. And what people are ideating is, oh, I need to be this like soft, lovey, fluffy little divine feminine. And it's like, no, that's not, I'm not that person. I'm a no bullshit person, and I own that. And the thing is, that's the world we live in. But then when you learn how to be a no bullshit person, you can also embody that you get to be in a frequency of light. So you're harnessing this like no bullshit energy, and you have to kind of sit in that space for a little bit. And then you rise into that frequency of, I get to like experience flow and ease and light, and life is easy and it flows and money comes to me easily, because your feminine takes kind of almost like a step back, and your divine masculine is what pushes you forward. So you got to find that balance of when am I in my divine masculine? When am I going to be in my divine feminine? And really learning how to find that balance of flow. And this summer, it's like, it's been really interesting. I have felt this like beautiful magic of creative energy, and I've just been creating, and I'm just in this flow. And the thing is like, I realized like a month ago, I'm like, I've really been in my feminine, and I typically am in my masculine. But when you feel secure in a masculine, like when you have a masculine that can hold that frequency for you, it's a lot easier to kind of find that flow, to like have someone securely hold that space for you. And so I have noticed that. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I'm really finding this beautiful organic beauty in the divine feminine, where you're able to like flow. You know, I need to be in my masculine in my business, because your business is masculine, right? It's going to be more of a masculine energy moving forward, having that creative, but also like learning when it's time to just, set up your system so that you can kind of take a step back and watch it flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I was actually talking about this with a previous guest on the previous episode. To the listeners, if you haven't listened to episode 27, go and listen to that, because it's really beautiful around how when you have these structures set up, and your inner divine king, your inner divine masculine can hold your inner divine feminine, then your inner divine feminine feels so much safer to come online more of the time. And so I end up doing things that are typically masculine, but in my feminine essence, and I can just flow in this beautiful way. And so I'll spend around like 30% of my time in my masculine, but around a 70 to 80% in my feminine. And this is really because I have so much protection over myself. I protect myself. I honor myself. I speak my boundaries. I speak my truth. I'm not afraid to stand up for myself and protect myself. And therefore my feminine feels like she's always held. She's always protected. She doesn't need to retreat behind the shadows and run away because she's scared now, but because she knows that like my inner divine king has her, as well as like my dark feminine essence is also there to stand up and like really be the protector of my divine heart and my divine light, because there's no light without the dark, there's no dark without the light. And really what I found is the more I've been able to go into my darkness and connect with my shadow and truly transmute the shame and the pain and the guilt, that is where I have found the most empowerment for my light, the most empowerment for my authenticity. Because like, I don't give a fuck if I walk into a room, I accept myself so fucking deeply. I've met the deepest parts of my shadows. Like, there's nothing anyone else can say to me that I haven't already said to myself, or I haven't already thought about myself, or I haven't already confronted within myself. They're like, oh, Josie, example's too loud. I'm like, bitch, I know I'm too loud. That's like one of the first shadows I had to fucking confront. Like, I love that I'm too loud now. Like, there's nothing you can hold against me, that's going to make me like retreat or feel intimidated, because I've honored and like rediscovered like all these parts of myself that in the past were like used against me and became a shadow. But now I went into the depths of my being. And like my dark feminine energy really reclaimed that, okay, you're too loud, but you're also bold and you're passionate and you're vibrant and you speak your truth and you stand up for those who are in need and you speak justice, you know? Like, I'm not afraid to tell people, hey, don't litter. Hey, I saw you do that. Don't disrespect the mother like that, you know? And so I'm not afraid to stand up for justice. And that's like, you know, we get to start to see it's really the bringing the pain to the power, or the power to the pain, really, to see like, okay, we have these parts of ourselves that we may have shamed in the past, or society has shamed them, but actually there's a deep gift underneath it that they are trying to bring to the surface. Like I was just saying around like this shadow of being too loud, and how it really allows me to actually stand up for justice and speak my truth and stand up for those that don't have a voice, those being, you know, the animals or the earth or the underprivileged or, you know, the abused or whatever. And so I can use that fierceness to actually like empower myself and others and protect myself and others. So it's really like so beautiful when you start to enhance this relationship with yourself.
Well, and it's really funny because like I take up my space and I don't care. I was at a swim meet this weekend and I walked by a gentleman who walked like close to me, and he was coming this way and he looked at me like I was supposed to stop, but I just kept walking. He like looked at me like, wow, you know, like he was really triggered by it, you know? And I just think it's funny. Like, and I'm to the point where I see like the triggers, like I actually laugh. Like I'll actually start laughing because it's so comical, because it's like, oh my gosh, you're so in your mind, like you can't even see past it. But also in the same note, like I'm sending you love that you're so in your mind, because like that's a really hard place to be in, because it's not fun to be stuck in here. It's finding that beautiful balance. Life should be fun. Life should be enjoyable. And when you realize that life is just happening for you, and really you're just creating what you're here to learn and experience and transform and alchemize, it makes life more enjoyable. And life should be fun. And no matter the circumstances of what your life may be, you know, like, you know, I don't like living away from my partner. I don't want to live away from him, but that's the reality that I subconsciously created. And, you know, I know it will eventually change. I know my limits, and you know it will be interesting. I'll tell people like, hey, like I don't have time for that, and they're like, oh well, that's just a limited belief. And I'm like, no, like really, like I know where my limits are. Like I homeschool my child, I'm by myself, and I've got two children that are both very, very active. The thing is I still need to show up as a really embodied, and I need to show up as a mom, and I need to make sure that my kids feel and see me on a regular basis, instead of just, you know, I see it very often, women not finding that balance of like, you have a spiritual business and you have to choose between your spiritual business and your kids. Well, I'm going to choose my kids. I'm going to choose my kids. I only get 18 years with them. And then after that, they may not, I mean, they'll be around, but you really just, you only get so many summers. You only get so many Christmases. You only get so many things. And so for me, it's like, I chose to have children. I chose to be this person, and I have very conscious children. And so it's fun to see them, you know, like, hey mom, we're going to watch a movie. Come with us. You know, it's like, it's cute to see them kind of like, you know, be in the moment. Or last night we watched a movie and I was like, hey, come watch a movie. And I like put my phone somewhere else, so I wasn't even tempted to touch it, right? And like really being in the moment, be like, hey, what'd you guys think of that? Do you think this is cool? And we watched a movie about the woman that swam across the English Channel, and they're like, why would they sabotage her like that? And I was like, because they didn't want women to like be worth anything. And my son's like, that's ridiculous. Like it's just so funny to see like the new generation. And he's like, that's ridiculous.
Love
like
that. I know it is ridiculous.
like,
it is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is
To
ridiculous.
keep ourselves small because someone else along the line told us, because society told us.
Yeah.
And so it's so
Yeah.
important that you know what your time is worth. You know what your energy is worth. You know what, and you know your boundaries. And like, that's the biggest thing that I just want to empower women to be able to do, is like connect to that. See yourself, because other people can only see your worth once you can see your worth. And once you can look in your eyes in the mirror and truly, truly, truly see the depths of your golden power and embody that, because no one is going to tell you your worth. You have to figure that out for yourself.
That's right. 100%. So it's fun to like see my 12-year-old just like, why is this? Why is that? Like, why do they do this? You know, and he's my non-public schooler. So he's like a male version of me, knows what he wants. It's fun to see your children kind of become what you're hoping they will become. And then simultaneously not having the attachments of like, you know, I see this a lot in parenthood where people have these attachments of like, well, I want you to be really good at this. And it's like, meet your children where they're at.
Yeah.
Don't make them anything that they're not supposed to be. Don't, like, you can see things differently than, but let them have the experience that they're here to experience, right? And just harness that energy. And that was a big lesson for me in the last year, is like, let your children just have the experience they're meant to have, and not try to like protect them or shield them from whatever life is supposed to throw them, so they learn how to move and flow in society and move in the matrix and really harness the frequencies that they know. My daughter came home one day and she's like, I don't have any friends. And I was like, why? She goes, they're all kind of like, they talk about each other. I just don't really like that. And I was like, that's okay. You shouldn't like that, And she's 7. And I'm like, it's
Wow.
okay. You're not supposed to like that. She goes, it just kind of like made me feel bad. And I told her, I was like, I actually got out a candle and I was like, hey, you like this, right? Your light is your soul. And when you involve yourself with people that are around a candle, your aura is this glass. And if you let too many people that want to blow out, like compete against you or feel like they're better than, they're going to blow out your flame. And your flame is your soul. So don't let someone blow out your flame. And she's like, okay, I got that. It was like clicked so easily. Kids really learn with like analogies and being able to
Yes.
physically see things. And so
Yeah.
I always just say, letting them blow out your flame. She's like, nope, you're not blowing out my flame. I'm like, it's better to
Yes,
be alone.
queen.
It's
I
better
love.
to be alone than it is for the right. She's my little star seed. She speaks light language and she's a channeler, and she's
Oh,
so fun. She's 7. So she's really fun to like, she just has this beautiful aura. And I
oh,
was like, don't let someone blow out your flame. And so she very much she'll be by herself and she's totally okay with it. I'm like, dude, you're gonna like move some mountains in this society, because I think she's here to do big
wow.
things. But it's fun to
Oh
watch
my
when you're
God.
empowered, and then your children see that you're empowered, that makes them empowered. And so really, as a mom, if there's moms watching this, remember that your children are watching you, and the way that you respond and react to other people is how they're going to learn and respond to other people. And it's not about being perfect, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I apologize to my children, but that didn't happen to me. My parents, they just kind of push things under the rug, which is that
Yeah.
typical
Yeah.
pattern, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really good to like show your children, like, I'm human, I make mistakes, I own my mistakes, and I
Yeah.
self-reflect. And your children will learn to do the same if you do it.
Yeah. Beautiful. And there's no hierarchy between you and them. It's so beautiful. I
No.
love that. Thank you for bringing that in. Oh, this has been such a soul nourishing conversation. Thank you so much for your time and for your energy and sharing all this beautiful wisdom with us. I would love it if you could just speak to the audience on how can they connect with you deeper. Obviously, I'll put all of your website and social media links in the description below. But yeah, what you have going on, what programs, what's going on in your world.
So I'm currently gonna do a 8/8 portal lion activation. That will be obviously the 8/8 portal. It's a 3-part series. In August, I'm going to actually be teaching how to hijack your ego. So that will be me teaching you actually how to work with your ego system. Business has really moved towards teaching people tools. How do you become the best version of yourself? I have a membership called Soul, which is a beautiful community. Josie's been in it, open to men or women. And it's really just to teach you a variety of ascension tools, to teach you how to help yourself, to empower yourself. And I actually have almost 3 years worth of content on an app that you have access to as soon as you join. That's $30 in US money. To join, you also get a coupon to use in the shop for any activations or towards any workshops that you want to use towards it. So I mean, you're pretty much getting your money back. So you get like a two-hour workshop, and then you get to use it in a shop and use an activation or a workshop. So Soul actually feeds my soul, and I love it because it's just so organic and it's easy. And I just get in and I'm like, okay, what are we learning? And I just start writing out these different beautiful workshops. Last month I actually helped people like the power of choice. Like, what is the power of choice? Why do you make a choice? Do you make a choice based on fear? Do you make a choice based on love? And how does that look? Does it feel differently? And then the activation was I removed the control spirit from the sacral energy source. And so when you remove the control spirit, it's like really empowering, because now you're starting to make choices based on love instead of control. And so it was all intertwined. So that's kind of what Soul is looking like. And in October, I'm actually going to open up a certification for psychic development and light weaving coding. So that will start in October. So I'm really excited about that as well. It will be a membership where you can pay by the course. And so that's what I've got going on.
Amazing, Michelle. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you're interested, please connect with Michelle. She's really one of the good ones. Drop all of her links in the description below. And yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here to all the listeners. And yeah, many blessings. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode and engage with all the wisdom that was shared. If you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to leave a review on your podcast platform of choice, as this really helps this wisdom reach new people. If you have any questions or queries, please feel free to reach out to me via Instagram DM or send me an email. You can follow me on my personal account on Instagram at Josie, Josie _Thorne, THORNE, or you can follow Sync and Flow, my business accounts, at Sync, that's spelled SYNC _in_flow. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or queries you may have. Otherwise, get in contact to book a free discovery call to start your self-healing spiritual journey today. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now, loves.